I never thought Emily would be the type of woman to disappear without a word. It wasn't just unlike her, it was impossible. She planned everything. She was the kind of person who scheduled reminders to buy milk. She had calendar notifications for doctor's appointments 6 months in advance. If she was late by even 10 minutes, I'd get a text. And then she was just gone. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she was busy. I told myself I was being paranoid. But then the first night passed. Then the second. And the silence stretched, growing heavier, suffocating me. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I texted. No answer. I messaged her friends. They hadn't heard from her. I called her job and they told me she hadn't shown up for work. By day 3, I was driving to places she might be, my mind running through every possibility, from a car accident to a mental breakdown. I checked hospitals. Nothing. I called her parents. They were just as confused as I was. On day 5, I went to the police. I sat in that stiff, uncomfortable chair across from a cop who looked bored out of his mind as I explained, voice shaking, that my wife was missing. He tapped his pen against his desk and said, "Sir, how do you know she's really missing? Maybe she just needed some space." Space? My wife had never once needed space from me. She wasn't the type to take off, not without at least letting me know she was okay. And the worst part? Nothing was missing. No suitcase. No extra clothes. Her car was still in our driveway. It was as if she had walked out the door and vanished into thin air. The police filed a report, but they didn't seem worried. I was. By day 7, I was a wreck. I hadn't slept. My head throbbed from too much caffeine and not enough food. I felt like I was losing my mind. And then, at nearly 3 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I bolted to the door, nearly tripping over myself in my rush to open it. And there she was. Emily. Her dress was wrinkled and hung awkwardly on her frame, like she had been wearing it for days. Her hair was tangled, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was barefoot, standing in nothing but that dress. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, and she smelled not like herself. Her perfume was gone, replaced by something else. Something heavy, something that didn't belong in our home. Her hands were trembling. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Her eyes darted away from mine, flickering to the floor, to the walls, anywhere but at me. I took a slow step forward, my stomach a knot of relief and fury. "Where the hell have you been?" She flinched, but then her face closed off, and in the smallest, weakest voice I had ever heard from her, she whispered, "Please, don't ask me that." The rage that had been simmering in me for a week exploded. "Are you kidding me, Emily? You disappear for 7 days. No calls, no texts, nothing. And you just show up at 3 in the morning like this." I gestured at her bare feet on the cold concrete, at the dress she was still wearing like she had been frozen in time. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. I can't talk about it." I laughed, but it was humorless, bitter. "You can't talk about it?" My voice was rising, but I didn't care. "The police have been looking for you. I've been losing my mind thinking you were dead in a ditch somewhere. And you can't even tell me where the hell you've been." She shuddered, shaking her head, and then she tried to step past me, like she could just walk back into the house like nothing had happened. I moved, blocking her way. "No, no way. You're not stepping into this house until you tell me the truth." Her breath hitched. For a split second, I saw guilt flash across her face before she buried it. I need to shower. I need to sleep. Please, we can talk about this later." Later. Like this was some minor argument that could wait. Like I wasn't standing there, staring at a version of my wife that I didn't recognize. And then I noticed it. The thing that made my stomach lurch. A small, dark bruise peeking out from the collar of her dress. Right near her collarbone. Right where someone's mouth might have been. I went still. My hands curled into fists. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Emily saw the change in me. She knew I had seen it. And that's when she made the biggest mistake of all. She lied to my face. I got mugged. Mugged? I stared at her, my pulse roaring in my ears. "You got mugged," I repeated, voice deadly quiet. She swallowed, nodding quickly. "Yeah, I was out and someone grabbed me, took my phone and money. I couldn't call you." I exhaled sharply, rage and disbelief mixing into something lethal. "So you got mugged? And instead of calling the police, or me, or anyone, you just disappeared for a week?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough. I was scared. I let out a hollow laugh. "You're a terrible liar." Her eyes widened just a fraction. But she recovered quickly, shoulders squaring. "I'm not lying. My blood boiled. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, to make her admit what she had done. But instead I stepped aside, let her walk into the house. Because I wasn't done. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, fists clenched, listening to the sound of the shower running upstairs. I could hear her moving around, the rustling of clothes, the creak of the bedroom floorboards. Every noise scraped against my nerves like nails on glass. She thought she had one. She thought she could just walk back in here, feed me some half-assed lie, and I'd let it go. I wasn't letting it go. Not after that bruise. Not after the way she smelled. Not after a week of silence and a pathetic excuse that didn't even make sense. I sat there, staring at the dark TV screen, breathing through my anger, until I heard the soft click of our bedroom door closing. Then I moved. Emily had left her purse by the door. I grabbed it. My hands were steady as I unzipped it, pulling out her phone. It was dead. Convenient. I shoved it into my pocket and kept digging. Wallet, receipts, lipstick, and then a hotel keycard. I turned it over in my hands, my pulse hammering in my ears. Hilton, room 609. I stared at it, my stomach twisting into knots so tight I thought I'd be sick. A hotel. A goddamn hotel. For 7 days. I closed my eyes, breathing through the wave of nausea. I knew. I fucking knew. But I needed more. I needed proof. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking now, and searched for the Hilton's number. When the front desk picked up, I forced my voice to stay calm. Hi, I think my wife left something in her room. Emily Carter, room 609. Could you tell me when she checked out? The woman on the other end hummed, clicking away at her keyboard. Then, in the most casual voice imaginable, she said, "Oh, Mrs. Carter? She hasn't checked out yet." Everything stopped. The air in my lungs turned to ice. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard it hurt. She hasn't checked out. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then somehow I found my voice. Are you sure? Yes, sir. Room 609 is still active under her name. Would you like me to leave a message for her? I hung up. I sat there, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached, mind racing, pulse hammering, vision blurring. She hadn't even checked out. Which meant she hadn't come home because she wanted to. She came home because something went wrong. I looked at the stairs. She was up there, sleeping in our bed, while her room at the Hilton was still waiting for her. I stood. My entire body was vibrating with fury. And then I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I was going to room 609. The drive to the Hilton felt like a fever dream. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my mind was anything but. My thoughts spun in violent circles, dragging me through every scenario, every possibility, each one worse than the last. She hadn't even checked out. That meant she never planned to come home. Something forced her back. Something had gone wrong. Traffic lights blurred past. I barely remembered parking. I was inside the lobby before I even realized I had left the car running. The woman at the front desk looked up, smiling in that polite, detached way customer service workers do at 2 in the morning. Welcome to the Hilton. How can I help? Room 609, I said, my voice cold. Emily Carter. Her smile faltered. Are you a guest, sir? I need to get into that room. Her fingers twitched toward the keyboard, but she hesitated. I'm sorry, but I can't let anyone in without the guest's permission. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keycard. I held it up between 2 fingers. I already have permission. Her eyes flickered to it, and for a second I thought she might argue. Then she gave me a slow nod. Elevators are to your left. I was already moving. The ride up was silent, but my heart wasn't. It pounded in my ears, my chest, my throat. I stared at my own reflection in the elevator doors, at the tight line of my jaw, the hollowed-out rage in my eyes. The number 609 stared back at me as I stepped into the hallway. I slid the key card into the lock. The light blinked green. The door clicked open. I stepped inside. The room was dark. Too dark. The air was thick, stale, like someone had been in here for days with the curtains drawn. The scent of perfume and something else, asterisk, asterisk, something masculine, something foreign, something that didn't belong to me, asterisk, asterisk, curled in my nose like a slap to the face. And then I saw them. The suitcases. 2 of them. One of hers, one that didn't belong to me. Someone else had been living here with her. I took a slow step forward, my hands curled into fists. My pulse was roaring in my ears now, deafening. The bed was unmade. Sheets tangled. Pillows out of place. 2 water bottles on the nightstand. A phone charger plugged into the wall, not hers. And then the bathroom door. Closed. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass. The soft creak of a floorboard. Someone was still here. Something snapped inside me. All the fear. All the uncertainty. All the doubt. Gone. I strode forward, grabbed the handle, and shoved the door open. And there he was, standing half-dressed in front of the mirror, rubbing a towel over his hair like he belonged there. Like he hadn't just spent a week with my wife in a hotel room. He froze. I stared at him. He stared back. And then he had the audacity to smile. I swung before I even realized I was moving. My fist connected with his jaw so hard it sent a shockwave up my arm. The smack of bone against bone echoed through the tiny bathroom. He staggered back, knocking over a glass from the sink, eyes wide with shock. His towel slipped from his shoulders, revealing exactly the kind of man I expected Emily to cheat with, young, built like he lived in a gym, with a perfectly trimmed beard and the kind of smug face that begged to be broken. I didn't give him time to recover. I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. His head hit the mirror with a dull thud, and for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. Fear. Who the hell are you? I growled through gritted teeth, my fingers tightening around his neck. Talk. He coughed, hands clawing at my grip. His voice rasped, and I loosened my hold just enough for him to choke out. I didn't know she was married, man. Lies. My stomach twisted in fury. I grabbed a handful of his wet hair and yanked his head forward, then slammed it back against the mirror. A crack splintered through the glass, jagged and violent, a reflection of the rage twisting inside me. Try again. His breathing was ragged now, his hands raised in surrender. I swear. She told me she was single. The words sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. She told him she was single. Not separated. Not in a bad marriage. Single. I let go of him so fast he nearly fell to the floor. He braced himself against the counter, chest heaving, face pale, watching me like I was a wild animal about to tear him apart. I turned away, my blood pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I stormed back into the room, grabbing her suitcase. I barely registered what I was doing, just that I needed to destroy something. Anything. I threw it onto the bed and ripped it open. Her clothes. Her perfume. Her laptop. And at the very bottom, a plane ticket. My breath caught in my throat. A one-way ticket to Miami. For two. Booked a week ago. I stood there, staring at it. My pulse a dull roar in my ears. She wasn't coming back. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a fling or a bad decision she regretted. She had planned to leave me. Planned to disappear, to start over with this bastard. And never tell me. Something inside me broke. Slowly, I turned back to him. He was still leaning against the bathroom counter, rubbing his jaw, watching me like he wasn't sure if I was going to kill him or let him live. Where is she? My voice was dangerously calm now. He hesitated. That was his second mistake. I was on him in 2 steps, grabbing him by the front of his shirt. Where the hell is she? She went home, he stammered. I don't know why. She just got scared or something. Said she needed to think. I let go of him, my chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. Emily had planned everything. And then something had changed. Something had spooked her enough to crawl back to me at 3 a.m., barefoot and shaking. I didn't know what it was, but I was going to find out. I drove home like a man possessed. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my heartbeat a dull, murderous thud in my ears. Emily had planned to leave me. She had booked a one-way ticket. She had another man's suitcase next to hers in that hotel room. But something had stopped her. Something had made her run back to me instead of running away with him. And I was going to rip the truth out of her, no matter what it took. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for the faint glow from our bedroom window. She was still awake. Good. I slammed the car door shut, barely hearing the sound over the storm in my head. My body was vibrating with rage, betrayal, adrenaline. The image of her suitcase in that hotel room was burned into my brain, the proof that she had been ready to erase me. I threw open the front door so hard it smacked against the wall. Let her hear me coming. Let her know there's nowhere left to hide. I took the stairs 2 at a time, each step fueling the fire in my chest. The bedroom door was closed. My hand curled around the knob, and for a single second I paused. What if she lies again? I shoved the thought away and burst inside. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in her lap. Her hair was still damp from the shower, her skin clean, scrubbed raw, like she was trying to wash away whatever she had done. But nothing could erase the stink of her betrayal. Her head snapped up as I entered. The moment she saw my face, her expression changed from guilt to fear. Where were you? She whispered. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that made her flinch. Where was I? Where were you? No, wait. I already know the answer to that. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the hotel keycard, and tossed it onto the bed beside her. Room 609, right? Her face drained of color. Gotcha. I cut her off, my voice like ice. Don't you dare try to lie to me again. She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the door, like she was already thinking of running again. I stepped closer, blocking her in. You weren't mugged. You weren't lost. You weren't scared. You were leaving me. Her lips parted, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She knew she was caught. I bent down, bracing my hands on either side of her on the bed. So tell me, Emily, what the hell happened? She looked away. Her fingers clenched the hem of her shirt. I made a mistake. A mistake. I barked out another bitter laugh. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. You packed a suitcase, booked a plane ticket, and spent a week screwing some random guy in a hotel room. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. She wasn't crying when she was with him. I didn't mean to. Bullshit, I snapped. You meant every second of it. So tell me, Emily, why are you here? Why aren't you on that plane right now? She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. I can't. Tell me. Her breath hitched. Her fingers dug into the sheets. Then finally she broke. I saw something, she whispered. The room went still. A cold prickle crawled up my spine. What do you mean you saw something? Emily shuddered, wrapping her arms around herself. I was supposed to meet him at the airport. We were going to leave. But when I got to the hotel, his suitcase was still there. But he wasn't. I frowned. So? She shook her head violently. You don't get it. His phone was there. His wallet. His watch. Everything. But he was just gone. The hairs on my arms stood up. I remembered the hotel room, the unmade bed, the 2 suitcases, the plugged-in charger. He had been there. And then he wasn't. A chill crept into my bones. So you panicked and ran? She nodded, her whole body trembling. I thought maybe he got arrested or something happened to him. And I didn't know what to do. For the first time since this nightmare started, I saw something new in her face. Real fear. Emily wasn't just guilty. She was terrified. And I had a feeling that whatever happened in room 609 was far from over. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't just angry. I was uneasy. Emily wasn't acting like someone who got caught cheating. She wasn't defensive, wasn't trying to gaslight me or spin some pathetic excuse. She looked like she had seen a ghost. I watched her, my mind racing. You're telling me he just disappeared? She nodded, arms wrapped around herself. I don't know what happened. He didn't text, didn't call. His suitcase was still there, but he was just gone. I exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down my face. Maybe he ran. Maybe he got tired of waiting for you to make up your mind. Her head snapped up. No, she said too fast. He wouldn't have left like that. My stomach twisted. What do you mean he wouldn't? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I took a slow, measured step forward, my anger bubbling up again. How long, Emily? Her bottom lip trembled. Please, don't. How long? She squeezed her eyes shut. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, 5 months. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. 5 months. My breath came out slow and shaky. 5 months, I repeated, just to hear how it sounded coming from my own mouth. So while I was at work, paying for this house, paying for your life, you were... I cut myself off, shaking my head. 5 months, Emily? Tears spilled over onto her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed hollow and sharp. You spent 5 months sneaking around with some random guy, planned to run away with him, and you never meant to hurt me? I took another step closer. Tell me, Emily, when exactly were you planning on telling me? Or were you just going to disappear in the middle of the night and let me figure it out when I found the divorce papers on the kitchen table? She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. But I wasn't feeling generous. You made your choice, I said, my voice cold. And yet, here you are. Not in Miami. Not with him. Why? Emily let out a shaky breath, wiping her tears away as if they would change anything. Because he's missing. I stared at her. You mean he ghosted you? She shook her head. No, I mean missing. Like his stuff was still there, but he was gone. Like something happened to him. I frowned. a strange chill creeping up my spine. I thought back to the hotel room, the suitcases, the plugged-in charger, the silence. I had assumed he had just left, that maybe he got cold feet. But now, I wasn't so sure. Emily was watching me now, searching my face. "I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything," she whispered. "But I don't know what to do. I'm scared." She should be scared. But something about the way she said it unsettled me. I turned away, running a hand through my hair. My rage wasn't gone, not by a long shot, but now it was tangled with something else. Something I didn't like. Unease. I had gone to that hotel to catch my wife in a lie. But now I was standing here, in our bedroom, looking at a woman who was shaking with real fear. And I had a feeling that this mess was far from over. "Give me his name," I finally said. Emily hesitated, like she was weighing whether she could still protect him. Like she still owed him something. I turned to face her, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Emily, I swear to God, if you lie to me one more time, Zach," she blurted out. "His name is Zach Porter." The name meant nothing to me. But it would. Because if she wasn't going to find out what happened to him, I left the house without another word. Emily called after me, her voice trembling, but I was already moving. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed to get as far away from the stench of her betrayal as possible before I did something I couldn't take back. Zach Porter. I gripped the steering wheel as I drove, my mind racing through every possibility. Either this guy ditched her or something actually happened to him. And if it was the first option, good. Let him rot. But if it was the second, I exhaled sharply and pulled over. I needed a place to think. Somewhere away from her, away from that house. I grabbed my phone and did the only thing that made sense. I searched his name. Took a second, but then there he was. A LinkedIn profile. A few old college photos. A gym membership ad where he looked like every other fitness bro with a perfect smile and a punchable face. And then a news article. I clicked on it, my stomach tightening as the page loaded. Local man reported missing. Zach Porter last seen at Hilton Hotel. My breath caught in my throat. The article was from earlier today. He really was missing. I scrolled down, my pulse hammering in my ears. His car was still parked at the Hilton. Security footage showed him entering the building, but there was no footage of him leaving. I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone. This just got a whole lot worse. I sat there, breathing hard, trying to piece it together. Emily had planned to run. That much was clear. She had been so sure of her decision until she walked into that hotel room and found her lover gone. Gone without a trace. What the hell happened in room 609? A sharp knock on my window nearly made me jump. I turned my head fast, too fast. My heart was already in my throat when I saw the cop standing outside my car. I rolled the window down, forcing my face into something neutral. "Officer." The cop, mid-40s, tired eyes, hand resting on his belt, tilted his head. "You all right, sir? You've been sitting here a while." I hadn't even realized. My hands were still clenched around the wheel. I nodded. "Yeah, just needed a minute." His gaze flicked to my phone. The screen was still open on the news article about Zach. His expression changed. "Not much, but enough." "You know him?" I hesitated. "I tell him no." But something about the way he asked made my skin prickle. "Why?" I asked instead. The cop exhaled slowly, tapping his fingers against my car door. "Because you're not the first person looking for him tonight." A cold chill ran down my spine. "What?" He studied my face for a long moment, then straightened. "Be careful who you go looking for." Then, without another word, he walked away. I sat there, staring at his retreating figure, pulse hammering. What the hell did that mean? Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my bones. I had gone looking for a cheating wife. Now, somehow, I was caught in the middle of something bigger. And I had a feeling Emily knew a hell of a lot more than she was telling me that I drove back home. But my mind wasn't in the car. That cop's words kept playing over and over in my head. "You're not the first person looking for him tonight." Who else was looking for Zach Porter? And more importantly, why? I clenched the steering wheel, my pulse hammering. This was supposed to be simple. I was supposed to catch my wife in a lie, throw her cheating ass out, and move on with my life. But now her lover was missing, and I was knee-deep in something I didn't understand. I pulled into the driveway, my headlights cutting across the house. Emily's silhouette was visible in our bedroom window, pacing. Good. Let her be scared. I slammed the car door and headed inside. She was waiting for me at the top of the stairs, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Where did you go?" Her voice was small, fragile. I ignored her. I pulled out my phone, opened the news article about Zach, and held it up in front of her face. "When were you going to tell me about this?" She sucked in a sharp breath. Her hands twitched at her sides. She looked guilty. So she already knew. "I don't lie, Emily. Not again." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. I took a step forward, backing her against the wall. "I just had a cop tell me I'm not the only one looking for this guy. So I'm going to ask you one last time, what the hell happened in that hotel room?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. She looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me again. And then she cracked. "I don't know," she blurted out, her voice shaking. "I swear, I don't know. He was supposed to meet me and then he wasn't there. His stuff was there, his phone, everything, but he was gone." I stared at her, my heart hammering. There was something off about the way she said it. Like she was leaving something out. I narrowed my eyes. "Emily." She shook her head quickly. Too quickly. "I don't know anything else, I swear." I reached into my pocket, pulling out the hotel key card. I flipped it between my fingers, watching her reaction closely. "So if I go back to room 609 right now, I'm not going to find anything?" Her face drained of color. "Gotcha." I leaned in close, lowering my voice. "What aren't you telling me?" She bit her lip, hesitating. I think someone was following us." My blood ran cold. "What?" Emily swallowed hard. "I noticed it a few times. A man. I don't know who he was, but I kept seeing him near the hotel." Zach thought I was being paranoid, but her voice cracked. "What if it wasn't paranoia? What if something happened to him?" I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. So this wasn't just about an affair. Someone else was involved. Someone was watching them. And now Zach was gone. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. None of this made sense. I had walked into this expecting a confrontation with my cheating wife, but now I was standing here, hearing her talk about a stranger watching them? A lover who vanished into thin air? Nothing about this was normal. And I had the sinking feeling that this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't go home. Not yet. I sat in my car, the night pressing in around me, my mind racing through every detail. Emily had been ready to disappear with Zach. But Zach disappeared first. The cop's words kept ringing in my ears. "You're not the first person looking for him tonight." Who else was looking? His family? His friends? Someone worse? I checked the article again, scrolling past his grinning photo. There was a brief mention of the hotel's security footage. Zach was seen entering his room at 10:42 p.m. No footage of him leaving. That was over 24 hours ago. I gritted my teeth and put the car in gear. I needed to see that hotel footage for myself. The Hilton night clerk was the same woman from before. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Sir, I need to see the security cameras for room 609. I interrupted, placing my hands flat on the counter. She swallowed. I really can't. Please." My voice came out rougher than I intended. "Something's not right. Just let me see when he left." She hesitated. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "If the cops get involved, they'll see it anyway. But by then, it might be too late." That did it. She exhaled sharply, glancing around before motioning me to follow. 5 minutes. That's all I can give you." The security room was small, cluttered with monitors. She clicked through footage, scrolling back to last night. "There," I said, pointing. "Zach, walking into room 609. He was alone, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his head down. 10:42 p.m. She sped through the footage. I leaned in, waiting. Nothing. No footage of him leaving. I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. "That's it." She nodded. "That's all we have. He never checked out. He never left his room." I clenched my jaw. That made no sense. I took a deep breath, staring at the screen. "Show me when Emily arrived." She scrolled forward. 2:14 a.m. Emily appeared on the screen, walking down the hallway in that same wrinkled dress. Her movements were fast, frantic. She stopped in front of room 609. Knocked once. Then twice. Then started banging on the door. I leaned in. My pulse was pounding now. Emily reached into her purse, pulled something out, the key card. She slid it in. Opened the door. Stepped inside. The door shut behind her. And then 2 minutes later, she ran out. My stomach dropped. Emily bolted down the hallway like something was chasing her. Her breath was ragged, her eyes wild. She stumbled once, caught herself, then disappeared around the corner. The timestamp read 2:16 a.m. A 2-minute gap. That's all it took. What the hell happened in that room? I muttered. The night clerk was silent. I pushed away from the desk, my hands shaking. I needed to get back home. Now. Because if Emily was that scared, if something had happened in those 2 minutes that made her run instead of leave with Zach, then I needed to hear the truth. And I needed to hear it now. I drove home like a man on fire. The headlights blurred against the pavement, the streetlights casting long shadows that twisted and stretched as I sped past. 2:14 a.m. Emily enters. 2:16 a.m. Emily runs. 2 minutes. That's all it took for everything to go to hell. I slammed the car into park and stormed into the house. The door banged against the wall, but I didn't care. She wasn't going to run from this. Not again. Emily was in the kitchen, gripping a glass of water with trembling hands. She looked up, and the second she saw my face, she knew. Her breath hitched. You went back. I tossed my keys onto the counter, barely hearing the clatter. I saw the footage. She paled. I took a slow step toward her, my voice dangerously low. You had 2 minutes in that room. 2. You walked in, and then you ran out like the devil himself was behind you. So tell me, Emily, what the hell happened in room 609? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her fingers clenched around the glass so tight I thought it might shatter. I slammed my hand onto the counter, making her flinch. Tell me. Her breath came fast, shallow. I don't you dare say you don't know. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought he'd be there, she whispered. I thought he was waiting for me. But when I walked in, she swallowed. Hard. Like she was trying to choke down something too big for her throat. He wasn't. My pulse pounded. What do you mean he wasn't? His stuff was still there. She nodded shakily. It was. But Zach, he wasn't. And the room. She let out a shuddering breath. Something was wrong. I frowned. Wrong how? She closed her eyes, as if trying to block out the memory. The lights were off. But not just off, it was dark. Too dark. Like the room was swallowing the light. Her fingers dug into her arms. And the smell, God, the smell, it was like rotting flowers and something else. Something bad. A chill crawled up my spine. I called out for him. She swallowed again. I stepped inside. Just one step. She was shaking now. Visibly shaking. And then, I pressed. Emily looked at me, and for the first time I realized this wasn't just guilt. This wasn't just regret. This was terror. The door slammed shut behind me, she whispered. Like hard? Like someone kicked it closed. My stomach dropped. There was someone else in the room? Her head shook in tiny, frantic movements. No, a tear slipped down her cheek. I don't know. I felt something. Like the air was pressing against me. Like something was watching me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Goosebumps pricked along my arms. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, voice trembling. And then I heard it. My mouth went dry. Heard what? Her breath hitched. Zach. The room felt colder. Emily's voice was barely a whisper now. It was his voice. But it wasn't right. It was too low. Too slow. Like it was being pulled apart. Her eyes locked onto mine, wild, terrified. It said, you shouldn't have come back. A sharp, electric pulse shot through my chest. She was crying now, her whole body trembling. I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. I left everything. I didn't even shut the door. She shook her head, her breath ragged. I shouldn't have gone back. The room was deathly silent. My skin was ice. My mind screamed at me to call bullshit, to tell her she was making it up to cover her tracks. But deep down I knew. She wasn't lying. Something happened in that room. Something took Zach Porter. And whatever it was still waiting.